Thank you, Tremaine. I really appreciate those kind words. Before I share some thoughts with you today, I recall Bev Cosby always said, everyone is special, everyone has a gift, and that applies equally to all of you are here. However, I do want to recognize a couple of people who I have served with over the last 10 years or so. That is former city mayor Michael Gillette, Dr. Gillette, who is right up there at the picnic table. And we also have with us the current vice mayor of the city, Bo Wright. Bo, raise your hand. Where are you? We also have with us the newest member of City Council, Chris Feraldi. Chris, please raise your hand. And we are very fortunate to have the vice chair of the Lynchburg School Board, Dr. Bob Brennan. Bob is here. Where are you, Bob? And I do understand that Dr. Coleman, the chair of the school board, intended to come, but I'm not sure if he's here yet. If he is, raise your hand, Dr. Coleman. All right. Well, he may show up very shortly. I was 10 years old in June 1961. At that time, the Church of the Covenant and Lynchburg Christian Fellowship, now Lynchburg Covenant Fellowship, had just opened a new pool down behind me. This pool was intended for the members of the church, for the campers of Lynchburg Covenant Fellowship, and actually for the general neighborhood. Independence Day in 1961 was sunny and hot. The new pool was full of neighborhood children and their families. I was there with my two brothers, Joe and Mitch. I have a sister, Margaret, who is here today, but I think she was only 5.5, and our mother wouldn't let her come to this pool supervised by 10, 11, 12-year-olds. So she wasn't here. But she certainly has been here many, many, many times after that. To my knowledge, no one at the pool that afternoon knew that the city of Lynchburg had closed all of its public pools when African Americans had sought entry into the white-only segregated pool at Miller Park earlier that morning. A series of regrettable, yet perhaps fortuitous events soon unfolded after cars drove into our camp parking lot, to my right over here, and African American children, along with their adult chaperones, began to swim in our camp's pool. Most of my neighborhood friends quickly exited the pool and stood in the grass outside the pool fence, scrutinizing the actions of those of us who remained inside. My two brothers and I, among other children, were ones who did not leave the pool after our new guests arrived. The white children and white adults stood outside the pool fence and became angry over the fact that African Americans were swimming in their pool. They shouted obscenities and crudely gestured to those of us who were in the pool. Reverend Bev Cosby soon walked down from the church building down to the pool to speak with everyone. Some of the white children's parents then arrived and began arguing with Bev and protesting about the damage. Yes, the damage Bev was doing to the pool by letting African Americans swim in it. In his usual kind and pleasant manner, Bev invited the protesters to enter the pool and enjoy a swim. Bev's invitations were met with obscenities and scorn. While I was not able to hear exactly what Bev had said to the white children and their parents outside the fence, Bev later told me that he had assured them to please go in for a swim. The water is so fine. My brothers and I were scorned and ridiculed by our white friends and neighbors that day and in the succeeding months. They called us communists, the N-word lovers, and traitors. They spit and threw rocks at us and vandalized our belongings. Threatening phone calls were made to our house. My brothers and I found friendships that day among our new pool guests and in the months to come. Most significantly, we had an opportunity to observe and participate in a small event to reverse institutional wrongs. Bev Cosby's lifelong ministry sought to eliminate barriers between people. He zealously sought to help people, everyone, appreciate, as he phrased it, quote, the specialness of difference, unquote, and appreciate the gifts that everyone had, not only to improve themselves, but to benefit the community. Bev was not one for flamboyance and show, but Bev would be excited about today's celebration. While the occasion of that July 4th afternoon was almost spontaneous and may have been a relatively minor event, it strategically moved the needle of Lynchburg's moral compass and social consciousness. For those of you who did not know Bev Cosby, I can tell you that he was never satisfied with past accomplishments. Why? Because Bev Cosby felt an urgency to undertake the next challenge, to take the next step to make life better for every person in this city. Yes, Bev always appeared quiet and calm, but he possessed a restless drive to help everyone in the city meet their spiritual, practical, and emotional needs. Of course, Bev never took credit for his seemingly endless chain of victories in helping others. But I most confidently tell you that Bev would be pleased that today, 6 decades later, we, all of us, are gathered here to recognize his courageous seizure of an unforeseen opportunity to change the hearts, the consciousness, and the perspectives of so many people who were no longer willing to be captives of a grossly segregated community. Yes, in his unique way, Bev Cosby gently allowed people to confront the foolishness of their biases and move bravely toward the greater inclusivity we may see around us today. My brothers and our camp friends, Rich Harris and Tommy Ball, had probably never heard the words Jim Crow or experienced the trauma of racial discrimination on that day or before that day. But for those of us who were here on that July 4th afternoon and over the following months, we had a precious chance to internalize a small portion of the overwhelming stigma and humiliation of those who suffer racial discrimination. We gained tangible insights into how prejudices lead people to say and do hurtful and destructive things for no rational purpose. I clearly saw that if I was to judge a person for things over which they have no control, it would brand me an ignorant fool. The lessons of those days were not convenient, but my brothers and I were proud to have behaved as our parents, our church family, especially Dolly and Will Cardwell here, and so many others, taught us to do. Yet those of us who knew Bev Cosby were fortunate to have been guided by his values and to have been here to witness his ministries on that day and on so many others, both before and afterwards. I think it's somewhat ironic, if not prophetic, that in 1965, Lynchburg City Council conducted a public hearing and then voted to construct 2 new integrated public swimming pools in the city. My father was a vocal advocate at that city council public hearing, and in the council meeting approving that decision, Mayor James P. Old cast the deciding vote. Why is that ironic or prophetic? That is because Lynchburg Mayor James P. Old was one of the founders of this camp and of the Church of the Covenant. He and his wife resided in the upstairs of the church building there behind you in the 1950s and were close friends with Bev Cosby, Jack and Ann Cosby, Dolly and Will Cardwell, and all of the early church and camp family. Since then, the vision and values of this church and camp, like that of Diamond Hill Baptist Church and so many others, have gradually been woven into the fabric of our city's values. These visions and efforts have made a remarkable difference in the lives of Lynchburg citizens and for those far beyond. Our city's moral character is extraordinarily different from that of 1961. So in many respects, I like to think that July 4th, 1961 was a metaphorical Independence Day for the moral conscience of our city, as well as for me. Thank you, Bev. Thank you, Camp Kum-Ba-Yah. Thank you, Church of the Covenant and Lynchburg Covenant Fellowship. And thank you all for being here today.